before reality, before awareness, before existence itself. What was there? Not space, not time, not darkness, not light, because even those require existence. And here, there is no existence, no observer, no observed, no experience, not even nothing, because nothing is still something, a concept, an idea. And here, there are no concepts, no ideas, no possibility of anything. Long pause, absolute silence. This is not emptiness. This is not void as you imagine it. This is beyond emptiness, beyond void, because emptiness implies space. And here, there is no space, no location, no dimension, no direction. There is no here. There is no there. There is not even is. Pause. Language collapses. Because language requires reference. But here, there is nothing to reference. No comparison. No contrast. No distinction. Slow whisper tone. This is not something you can think about. Because thought requires existence. And here, thought cannot exist. And yet, we are pointing to it. Not describing. Not explaining. But indicating. The edge of understanding. Long silence. Because this is the absolute. Not as a presence. Not as awareness. But as the absence of even the possibility of presence. And now, a paradox deeper than all others emerges. If this is truly absolute, then how did anything arise? How did existence appear? How did awareness emerge? How did reality begin? Because from this, nothing can come. No cause. No effect. No transition. No transformation. And yet, here we are. Existing. Aware. Experiencing. Pause, tension builds slowly. This is the impossible origin. Not a beginning. Not a creation. But an appearance. Without cause. Existence. Emerging from that which cannot produce anything. And this breaks everything. Because it means there is no reason. No explanation. No underlying mechanism. Existence is not built. Not generated. Not created. It simply appears. Deep silence. And now, the mind reaches its limit. Because this cannot be resolved. There is no answer. No deeper layer. No hidden truth behind it. This is the end of explanation. And yet, something even stranger happens. Because even this absolute cannot be confirmed. Because there is no observer. No awareness to perceive it. No existence to contain it. So even saying it exists is incorrect. And saying it does not exist is also incorrect. This is beyond both. Beyond existence. Beyond non-existence. Beyond all duality. Long pause. And from this, something appears. Not gradually. Not logically. But instantly. Awareness. Without cause. Without origin. Without transition. Suddenly. There is experience. There is perception. There is something. And that something is everything. Reality. Space. Time. Consciousness. All of it. Emerging from the impossible. And now, you begin to see that existence is not grounded. It has no foundation. No base. No root. It is floating. Suspended. Unsupported. And yet, perfectly stable. Because it does not need support. It simply is. Music slowly fades in, very subtle. And now, the entire universe feels different. Not as a system. Not as a structure. But as a miracle. Not in a mystical sense. But in a logical sense. Because it should not exist. And yet, it does. And that is the greatest paradox. Not contradiction. But impossibility. Reality is impossible. And yet, it is real. Pause. And now, you look at existence again. Not as something to understand, but as something that cannot be explained. And that changes everything. Because now, there is no need to search for meaning. No need to find purpose. No need to resolve paradox. Because the existence of anything at all is already beyond explanation. And in that realization, a deep silence appears. Not confusion. Not fear. But acceptance. Because when there is no explanation, there is nothing to solve. Only something to witness. To experience. To be. And now, you return. Back to awareness. Back to reality. Back to this moment. But with something different. A knowing. That cannot be spoken. That existence has no origin. No cause. No reason. And yet, it is. And maybe, that is the deepest truth. Not that reality is paradox. Not that awareness is fundamental. But that existence itself is impossible. And still, it happens. And now, we arrive at the final question. Not the biggest. Not the most complex. But the most fundamental. Why? Does anything exist at all? Pause. Not how. Not when. Not where. But why? Why is there something instead of nothing? Long silence. Because everything we have explored, every paradox, every layer, every realization, leads back to this. The one question that has no escape. Because no matter what answer you give, it demands another question. Why that? And why that? And why anything at all? Slow tension builds. If reality exists, why does it exist? If awareness exists, why does it exist? If the universe exists, why is it here? Because it does not have to be. There is no requirement for anything to exist. No rule that says existence must happen. And yet, it does. Pause. This is the deepest mystery. Not what exists, but why existence exists. Because every explanation fails here. If you say, it was created, then why was it created? If you say, it always existed, then why does it always exist? If you say, it is random, then why randomness? If you say, it is necessary, then necessary for what? Long silence. Every path leads to the same place. No answer. Because the question itself breaks logic. Because logic requires a framework, a system, rules. But this question is about the origin of all systems. And so, it cannot be answered within the system. Pause. And now, you begin to feel it. Not as a thought, but as a tension. A kind of mental gravity, pulling everything inward. Because this question has no boundary, no edge, no limit. It consumes every explanation, every idea, every belief, until nothing remains. Silence. And in that emptiness, something strange happens. The need for an answer begins to dissolve. Because you realize that the question assumes something. That there must be a reason, a cause, a purpose. But what if there isn't? What if existence has no reason? Pause. Not because it is hidden. Not because it is unknown. But because it does not exist. No reason. No purpose. No explanation. Deep silence. And at first, this feels unsettling. Because the mind wants meaning. It wants structure. It wants certainty. But here, there is none. And yet, existence continues. You are still here. Awareness is still present. Reality is still unfolding. without reason, without explanation, without necessity. Slow realization tone. And this is the final shift. That existence does not need a reason. It does not need a purpose. It does not need to justify itself. It simply is. Pause. And maybe that is the answer. Not an explanation, but the absence of one. Because any explanation would limit existence, reduce it, define it. But existence is not limited. It is not defined. It is not reduced. It is beyond all of that. Soft ambient begins. And now, the question changes. Not, why does anything exist? But, what is it like that anything exists? Pause. And suddenly, everything becomes direct, immediate, experiential. Because instead of searching for a reason, you are experiencing the fact, the impossibility, the miracle of existence itself. Emotional tone rises. That something exists. Right now. That awareness is happening. Right now. That experience is unfolding. Right now. Without cause. Without necessity. Without explanation. And yet, completely real. Pause. And in this realization, something profound happens. Gratitude. Not forced. Not emotional. But natural. Because when something does not have to exist, but does, it is seen differently. Not as normal. Not as expected. But as extraordinary. Soft silence. And now, you no longer ask why. Because there is no why. Only this. This existence. This awareness. This moment. And that is enough. Final slow tone. Because the deepest truth is not hidden in answers. It is revealed. When questions fall away. And what remains is not explanation, but presence. Long pause. And maybe that is why anything exists at all. Not for a reason. Not for a purpose. But simply to be. Deep breath, cosmic ambience, slow start. There was a time when reality felt certain, predictable, logical, understandable. Humanity believed that everything followed rules. And for a while, it worked. Science explained the stars. Mathematics predicted motion. Logic created order from chaos. But then, something broke. Not in reality, but in understanding. Because the deeper humanity looked, the more reality began to fracture. Particles behaved unpredictably. Observation changed outcomes. Contradictions appeared. Reality was not stable. It was fluid. And this changed everything. Because if reality is not fixed, then truth is not absolute. And if truth is not absolute, then existence itself becomes a question. Pause. And so began the journey. A journey beyond science, beyond philosophy, beyond thought itself, into paradox, where two truths can exist at the same time, where reality contradicts itself, where logic fails, and yet existence continues. Music slowly builds. Humanity pushed further. Beyond galaxies. Beyond time. Beyond space. And discovered something impossible. Reality is not fundamental. It is a layer. A projection. An experience. And beyond it, something deeper exists. Awareness. Not as a person. Not as a mind. But as pure presence. Silent. Unchanging. Infinite. And everything else appears within it. The universe appears within awareness. Time appears within awareness. You appear within awareness. Pause, emotional rise. And then came the realization. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. Not you as identity, but you as awareness. And this changed everything. Because now, the search ended. Not with answers, but with recognition. That nothing was ever missing. Nothing was ever separate. Everything was always one. Music peak. And yet, the journey did not stop. Because even this realization was not the end. There were deeper layers. Beyond awareness. Beyond existence. Beyond reality itself. A state where nothing exists. Not even nothing. No space. No time. No awareness. The absolute void. And from that, everything appears. Without cause. Without reason. Existence is impossible. And yet, it is. Long pause, silence. And this leads to the final question. Why? Does anything exist at all? Slow whisper. No answer comes. No explanation. No reason. Because existence does not need one. It simply is. Soft emotional tone. And now, everything becomes clear. Not as knowledge, but as presence. This moment. This awareness. This experience. Is all there is. And all there ever was. Final slow ending. You are not separate from reality. You are not separate from existence. You are not separate from the source. You are that. And maybe That is why anything exists at all. Not for a reason. Not for a purpose. But simply to experience itself. There was a time when humanity believed that reality followed rules. That every effect had a cause, that every event had an explanation, that everything made sense. And for a long time, it did. From the smallest particles to the largest galaxies, patterns existed. Order existed. Understanding was possible. On a small world called Earth, humanity built systems to describe reality. Science, logic, mathematics, frameworks that transformed chaos into comprehension. And those frameworks worked. They predicted outcomes, explained motion, revealed structure. But there was always a boundary, a point where understanding began to fracture. At first, it was subtle. Uncertainty appeared. Probability replaced certainty. Events could no longer be predicted, only described. Then came deeper fractures. Contradictions. Results that changed when observed. Outcomes that depended on perspective. Reality was not as stable as it seemed. Humanity pushed further, beyond Earth, beyond the stars, beyond the visible universe, into the deepest layers of existence. And there, it found something impossible. A contradiction not in theory, but in reality itself. A particle that existed and did not exist. A moment that both happened and had not happened. A system that was both stable and unstable. Not as illusion, not as error, but as truth. Reality was contradicting itself. At first, humanity tried to resolve it, to find the hidden variable, the missing equation, the deeper layer that would restore logic. But the deeper it went, the more contradictions appeared. Not fewer. More. It became clear that this was not a flaw in understanding. It was a property of existence itself. Reality was not consistent. It was self-opposing. A structure built on paradox. And then came the realization that changed everything. If reality contains contradictions, then logic is not absolute. Because logic cannot allow contradictions, and yet reality does. This meant something profound, that reality is not bound by the rules used to describe it. It is deeper, more complex, more fundamental than any system of thought. And then the ultimate question emerged. If reality can contradict itself, can it contradict its own existence? Can something exist and not exist at the same time, not as theory, not as abstraction, but truly? This question broke everything. Because if the answer is yes, then existence is unstable. It could vanish without cause, without warning. And if the answer is no, then there exists a rule that reality cannot break, which means reality is limited. Either way, a paradox remains. And then, something shifted. Humanity realized that the paradox was not a problem to solve, but a boundary of perception. Contradictions exist only when viewed from within a limited frame. From a single perspective. But what if reality contains all perspectives at once? What appears as contradiction may simply be incompleteness in observation. Two opposing truths are not in conflict, they are partial views of something larger. And yet, even this explanation was not enough. Because it assumes that reality must be consistent at some higher level. But what if it is not? What if contradiction is fundamental? What if existence itself is built on irreconcilable truths? A system where coherence is not required. A structure where meaning emerges from conflict. And as this thought unfolds, something deeper appears. Not in reality, but beyond it. A layer without space, without time, without structure. Not nothing, but not something either. Presence without form. Awareness. Not the awareness of a person, not the awareness of a mind, but awareness itself. Silent. Unchanging. Without boundary. And suddenly, everything shifts. Because reality is no longer fundamental. It is an appearance within awareness. Thoughts appear in awareness. Sensations appear in awareness. Time appears in awareness. Even the idea of space appears in awareness. And so the question changes. Where is reality? Is it outside, or is it within? And the answer becomes unavoidable. Everything that is known appears within awareness. Which means reality is not outside of you. It is within you. Not you as identity, not you as a person, but you as awareness. And then the final illusion begins to dissolve. The illusion of separation. Because if everything appears within awareness, then there is no outside. No boundary. No division. Only experience, unfolding within itself. And this leads to the most profound realization. The observer is not separate from the observed. The creator is not separate from creation. Awareness is not separate from reality. It is reality. And now, the question shifts again. Not what is reality, but why does anything exist at all? Why is there something instead of nothing? Because there is no requirement for existence. No rule that says anything must exist. And yet, existence is here. Every explanation fails. If it was created, why was it created? If it always existed, why does it always exist? If it is random, why randomness? If it is necessary, necessary for what? Every answer leads to another question, and every question leads back to the same mystery. And then something unexpected happens. The need for an answer begins to fade. Because the question assumes that there must be a reason. But what if there isn't? What if existence has no reason? Not hidden, not unknown, but simply non-existent. And in that realization, something changes. The search ends. Not because an answer was found, but because the need for one disappears. Existence does not need to justify itself. It does not need a purpose. It simply is. And now, everything becomes immediate. Not something to understand, but something to experience. This moment. This awareness. This presence. The fact that anything exists at all becomes the most profound truth. And with that, a quiet shift occurs. Fear begins to dissolve. Because fear depends on separation, and separation is no longer real. control begins to fade. Because nothing needs to be controlled. Even identity begins to loosen, becoming something optional rather than absolute. Life continues, but differently. Not as a problem to solve, but as an experience to live. Thoughts arise and pass. Emotions come and go. Reality unfolds, moment by moment, without needing to be understood. And in this unfolding, a quiet peace emerges. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but stable. Always present. Beneath everything. A kind of stillness that does not depend on conditions. And then, something even deeper is seen. That even this understanding is not final. That awareness itself may not be the end. That beyond awareness, beyond existence, beyond reality, there may be something even more fundamental, or perhaps nothing at all. And yet, here it is. Existence. Awareness. Experience. Appearing without cause, without reason, without necessity. And maybe that is the final truth. Not that reality makes sense. Not that existence has purpose. But that it exists at all. And you are that existence. Not observing it. Without needing to understand. Without needing to resolve. Just this. Just here. Just now. And that is enough. Long silence, fade into nothing.